Today we're going to talk about the last two steps of creating a big picture homeschool plan. And these are both focused a little bit on Mom, the homeschool teacher. In the last video, we talked about creating weekly checklists for our students. But you know that Mom might need a weekly checklist too? Mamas, and here I'm speaking to myself as well, we need to be faithful in this calling. And if we are going to expect something from our children, we need to be willing to check in and make sure they've actually done it. Especially at the beginning of the year, I find it helps me to have my own checklist of subjects I need to be checking regularly, like math tests or worksheets, reading journals I need to look over, and reminders to meet with older children to discuss the topics and books that they're reading. Those are just a few examples. And so the things you may have on your checklist may be a little different. I remember a few years ago when I was finding it hard to include my preschool age little one in the midst of a life with a lot of older siblings who needed my attention. I would actually put something like spend 15 minutes reading aloud to Isaac on my checklist. And that may seem a little silly, but it was a reminder to me this was important. It was worth including in the homeschool plan. Once again, we've created a structure of accountability, which encourages self-discipline. But because it's a weekly checklist, I'm not tied down to a certain date or time when things have to get done. That gives me a lot of flexibility in the day-to-day of life. Along with that flexibility, though, sometimes it is helpful just to create a bit of a flow and routine. And so our final tip here for big picture homeschool planning is to create a weekly time flow chart. Now, this is not the same thing as one of those charts with every 30-minute increment specifically detailed where you're like driven by the calendar and driven by the clock. That sounds super stressful and not fun at all to me. But remember back at the beginning when we talked about figuring out how much time each subject was going to take? That's when we're going to actually kind of create a flow to make sure that our energy is balanced, that any one given day isn't going to be too stressful, and we can kind of discuss those things with our kids and help them think through how to balance their homework for any outside classes with inside the home curriculum assignments, things like that. So it does help us to have a flow. So again, it's not by time, but we sort of know the order things are going to happen on any given day. At the biggest picture level for our family, this looks like meeting at 8 a.m. for morning time. Following morning time, the teens are dismissed for independent work, and I focus on the middle girls. We do our history, grammar, writing. And then they're dismissed for independent time, and I really focus on the first grader. And then we move back to Mom being the tutor who comes in and helps people through the day. Along with that is I really try to make sure that any outside commitments, and I may have already mentioned this in a previous video, but outside commitments we really try to keep in the afternoon so that that morning flow can be consistent. And just knowing that we are going to have that everyday routine, just doing the next thing. There it goes again. I say that, doing the next thing. That flow kind of keeps us on track. It keeps things more peaceful. We are not totally confused as to what's going to come next. And I find that most days, at least for our elementary and early middle school age kids, we really are able to get almost all things finished by early afternoon, if not by lunch. So maybe you're wondering, could this kind of big picture, easy homeschool plan work for your family? Maybe in the past you've tried to be too rigid in your schedule and you've had unrealistic expectations, and that's led to burnout and discouragement. So maybe this would give you the freedom you need. Or maybe you've tried to be too unplanned and kind of go with the flow, and no one's known what was expected of them. Maybe there was confusion or even laziness. And so again, this approach to planning can give you just the amount of freedom plus discipline that your family needs. Now, I didn't talk about specifics like what does homeschool planning for preschool look like, or morning time, or a textbook-free history curriculum across multiple grades. We haven't talked about high school or any number of specific things like that. But I do have resources to help you with those specifics, and I'll put those below in the video description. And if you have any questions, please do drop them below, and Maybe it will inspire me to create a few future homeschool planning pep talk videos. For even more homeschool planning encouragement, grab my free homeschool planning guide. You can find that at humilityanddoxology.com/homeschool-planning-guide, or just check the link in the show notes.